fun dick is over right now. This is angry dick. What is the deal with people? There's 204 new cards. Do you think every card is going in a deck? I don't understand. But like, this is just stupid. Oh, I'm not gonna put this in my deck because sometimes it's bad. Okay, that's 75% of cards.
Hey everybody, my name is Willoughby's and welcome back to the Lore Chronicles. Today I am joined once again by my friend Dick Burns, and we are going to talk about all of the cards that we think are pretty interesting for this upcoming set of Disney Lorcana ARCHAZIA'S Island. One thing I do want to note though is, yes, there are some cards like Toma and Sapphire coil that you just can't help but talk about. But we tried to be intentional with our card selection here and pick cards that you probably haven't heard too many people talk about before that we think have a lot of potential, or some cards that some people have talked about that are saying are going to be strong, but we honestly really don't think so. Regardless, in the end, this is just our opinion, and who knows what the metagame may shake out to be, especially without any testing going on. So take this all with a grain of salt. We're just giving our opinions and our first initial thoughts. Anything can change, and anything's fair game. So thank you guys so much for watching. Enjoy the video. All right, so let's go down the list here, starting off with Penny, and we're going to talk about some of these cards here.
All right, so Penny is a 2-cost inkable 1/2 that quests for 2. And whenever you play this character, you remove up to 2 damage from chosen character, and they gain resist +1 till the start of your next turn. So what do you think? Initial thoughts as this is your first trading card game.
All right, first trading card game, right? Don't come for me. I'm a net decker, not a deck builder. So I do like, I think they call them ETBs is what I've been people referring to them as. So I believe that's enter the battlefield, right? So I like that it has an on play. And then I also like the remove 2 damage. This is something that we saw on a legendary with Baymax. This is where my brain goes to, right? So Baymax would like remove 2 to gain 2 lore. So this is doing that with resist. So I think this is, especially in this color combination, this is a good way to protect your singers, protect a Calhoun. And it quests for 2 and it's low to the ground inkable. So I'm seeing a lot of like this could easily be thrown into a multitude of decks, whether it's the singing version or the aggro version. That's where my head goes to.
Yeah, I feel like this card is really getting slept on. So like you were saying, there's characters with enter play effects, and then there's characters that just do nothing. So in Magic, those are called Mole Drifters versus Baneslayer Angels.
Okay.
So for the non-dorks like me, we're going to refer to them as Brave Little Tailors.
Okay.
So characters that do nothing. And then we can refer to the other ones as something like Penny, what's basically an action when you play the card.
Yeah.
So if you play a deck where all of your characters do something when you play it, your opponent's removal is really bad. But then when you play a deck that has a mix of these kinds of characters and characters that do nothing, then your opponent, when they have the random Dragonfire in their deck, they look a lot less silly. So you never really want to Dragonfire something that already got value. So my thoughts with Penny is, this is great with Mr. Smee.
Yeah. Oh,
so
yeah.
if your Mr. Smee lives, you're gonna, and granted, if you don't want to Rapunzel it, you're gonna remove that damage, and then it's not gonna take a damage the next time you quest with it.
Yeah.
So like if you're playing against something like Ruby Sapphire, which is traditionally a terrible matchup, they might be waiting to use their Tipo to take out your Mr. Smee. And they're going to be waiting 2 more turns. And then, like, at the end of the day, you could also just Penny herself, and she's a bad Mr. Arrow. So, like, at least if you're playing it into a blank board, it's a little more protected for, until you get to ready. So, yeah, that's why I put Penny on here. Yeah. I think she's getting slept on.
I agree. I think that's going to be really cool. Nice. Okay, good pickup. All right, so next card we're looking at here, Kota.
Kota, I'll read it. Done.
I paused too. I was like, oh yeah, I'll let you read.
Yeah, so it's a 3-cost sinkable 2/2 that quests for 3. The only reason I put this on here is because we've had similar cards like Magic Carpet, but we've never had it as a 2/2. And yeah, it's always been a 1/3, and I've got to tell you, a 2/2 is so much worse. So I still don't think a card like this is gonna see play, but I love that they're willing to change the numbers around. We've learned if it costs 3 and quests for 3 and it's inkable, it has to have a 4 as the sum for the strength and willpower, a 3/1 would be the best, right? Like we would actually play that card. So give it to us, Ravensburger. That's all I got.
Nice. Okay, cool. Next up.
Maid Marian. So Maid Marian is a 4-cost inkable 3/3 that quests for 2. Dreamborn Hero Princess. During an opponent's turn, whenever one of your ally characters is damaged, deal 1 damage to chosen opposing character. Your character is named Lady Cluck, gain resist +1. So anything interesting about this one?
Okay, so there are a lot more allies now. That's the first thing. Like they've added a bunch with this set. And I know that Lady Cluck is huge. I know, in terms of stats, I know she's got really big stats. So
yeah, if you curve this into Lady Cluck, I'm pretty sure that Lady Cluck is like can't be banished.
Yeah, she's never dying.
Like a 2/7 with ward and bodyguard. Yeah. But I think I might be wrong. Chat can laugh at me if I'm wrong. I think this is the first character, or at least the first set. There might be more with this ability that your allies actually matter. So like I don't think there's anything else that your allies meant anything. I always thought it was just a throwaway tagline.
Yeah.
So it's pretty awesome that they're actually utilizing that ability.
Yeah, I agree. That like for example, Smee is an ally. So like I know a lot of people were saying like, oh, there's gonna be a new like pet keyword or whatever, these classifications.
I swore there would be. Yeah. I swear there would be a pet keyword.
Which is interesting because we even just saw recently revealed with something like the puppy shift. So it's like we're getting so close to things that are like animal specific, but we're not quite there. But like, yeah, so even something like Mr. Smee, right? Like he's an ally. So it's something to keep in mind is it's not just animals or familiars or things of that nature that are like getting this ally keyword. It's just anything that kind of like falls into that category. But yeah, it did seem kind of like null and void. And they are starting to do more things with it. And obviously in this color combination, right, sapphire and steel, chip damage and just like kind of doing one on occasion, it's gonna add up, right? Because you already have so many cards that do that in this pool with steel in general, right? With the Tinkerbells and things like that. So yeah, I think that's gonna be interesting, especially if we get even more allies and then we can kind of have a whole ally like deck going on, similar to how we see Floodborn builds and things of that nature.
Yeah, like no idea if it's gonna be like a meta thing, but I think it's awesome just like expanding the different utilities of things that are already printed on cards that we thought did nothing, basically.
Yeah. All right. Let's see, we got Hei Hei next.
Finally a Floodborn Hei Hei. Right. I can't believe this thing wasn't 6 colors with its own rules. That it can go in any deck. Like Hei Hei transcends all rules of Disney Lorcana.
Yeah.
So it's a 5-cost 1/5 quest for 2, but it has shift 3, resist +1, and when you play this character, put all cards from your hand into your inkwell face down and exerted. So like, yeah, we're not in the same group chats or social circles right now. What were the reactions from Florida, if any?
There were definitely reactions to this card. I can actually pull it up really quickly because we had a really long debate about this Hei Hei. People were saying, on one hand, it's really funny and like good for blue steel specifically, or excuse me, sapphire steel, which you see it's a sapphire steel card. But then immediately 2 more responses were like bad card, fun design. So yeah, some people are like, no, this could be a really good ramp, and then you play it on turn 5, like you ramp up and then you have all these cards. And then other people were like, well, you have all this ink, but then you're top decking, so you have nothing to do it with. So it has been a little like mixed.
Yeah, so like I've been seeing in my North Carolina group chats, my Eastern North Carolina group chats, of like, oh my god, this card is broken. Oh my god, this card is terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hilarious, like how people, for one, how they're just on total opposite sides. It's like there's only 2 sides: absolute broken or absolutely unplayable
for literally every card that gets released.
Yeah. But I think this card is super interesting, especially like the design space on it was super interesting. I personally would not bet anything on if this would be played or not. I have no idea. This card might be an all-star and it might be absolute trash.
Sure.
Like, there are cards that work well with it, right? You can play Hiram on 4, and then on turn 5, you could play this and then quest with Hiram. And then you have
Cards, yeah.
2 cards in your hand. Yeah.
And you can play them
like,
because you have so much ink.
yeah, exactly. Ruby Sapphire, like, they very often have very few cards in their hand. They just have great card selection. The biggest problem between Ruby Sapphire and Sapphire Steel is be prepared. There's grab your swords, and like you were saying, there's the chip damage, like Maid Marian, Tinkerbell, stuff like that. There's nothing that, like, if those top 2 cards are terrible, you can ever get back into the game.
Yeah.
So, like, I think if Hei Hei was just Sapphire, I would actually be like, oh no, this card's great.
Yeah.
But especially, like, you could play like Mufasa. Like, you could get some of these cards back somehow.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, for one, I do appreciate that they're kind of leaning into the Hei Hei meme, right? Hei Hei expanded consciousness, right? Like, they're hamming it up. But yeah, I think, and obviously that's part of, you know, the design. So this card isn't just Sapphire by design, and the game designers and developers decided that putting this specifically in Sapphire Steel was both a restriction and a bonus for the card, right? And so that's something to keep in mind too. I think I've seen a lot of people be like, with these dual ink cards specifically, being like, oh, if only this was this color, if only this was this. Well, that's kind of the point, right? They didn't want it to be in that color, and they wanted to restrict it because of, you know, potentially, as people would say, game-breaking abilities. So definitely cool to see. And one thing I've learned about Sapphire Steel players is they might take a little while, right? It might be several months or weeks into the metagame, but they will find a way to come back at the end of the last 2 weeks of Set Champs with a vengeance. So maybe we'll see some Hei Hei's.
They just need to hear people saying that the archetype's dead.
And then they start cooking.
Bring the fire. Yeah.
Then they start cooking. All right, let's talk about spaghetti dinner.
All right. So, does this card remind you of anything?
Okay, spaghetti dinner. Exert, pay 1.
Read it for you.
I haven't read it. I don't know what it does.
2 costs, uninkable. Okay, item. With very interesting that you don't actually consume it. It's just exert. Pay 1 ink. If you have 2 or more characters in play, gain 1 lore. You would think you would banish it because it's food.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. But as far as Disney Lorcana goes, like, does this remind you of any other cards?
I feel like, and I could be way off here, I feel like there is an item that you do banish, like to gain lore. Maybe the candlelight, or I might be mixing it up with something else.
Miracle Candle does it. But the card I was really looking for was Spellbook.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, so this, like, people saw this and they're just like, oh my god, like, people in my group are like, oh my god, it's insane, it's so good, you always have 2 characters. It's like, well, yeah, you always have 2 characters until you don't have 2 characters. Right. And, like, no one plays Spellbook. Right. In the colors that, like, you gain lore without questing. All of a sudden, like, this common is nuts. Like, come on, people.
No, you're right. Yeah. This is just a spellbook. Absolutely.
Yeah, like, I would rather pay 1 more when it comes into play than to have always have 2 characters, because how bad are you gonna feel when you draw this and you have 1 character?
Yeah, you top deck. You're in top deck mode. They've wiped your board. You're looking for something to get you back into the race, and it's spaghetti dinner.
Yeah, like, and then people don't realize, like, just paying that 1 a turn is, like, insane when you're just playing off curve for the whole game. Spellbook was best when you drew it like turn 10.
It was, yeah, like that. It was like way, I want to say, was that like set 2 or something? Like, it was way early. It was like the same set that it came out is when it saw some play, and then never again after that.
Yeah, and even then there were like 2 groups of people. There are the groups of people that are just like, well, if I draw this early, I definitely lose, but it's so good in the mirror when I draw it late. Exactly. I have to play it. Exactly. Versus the people that are like, you're not just gonna play the mirror for 8 rounds straight.
Yeah.
So like, yeah.
Which sometimes you
Bang.
did.
That's true.
Okay, so that's a good point. A worse spell book here with Spaghetti Dinner. Okay, so next we have Glass Slipper.
All right, the Glass Slipper, 2 cost, uninkable item. Again, love the design space in this set. It's like the designers were just like, all right, the game's selling well, we're gonna have fun. So
Nice.
you can only have 2 copies of the Glass Slipper in your deck, which is great. Like you only have 2 feet. That's such good flavor.
That is good design, yeah.
The only thing that would have been better is 2 different cards, and one said left Glass Slipper and one said right Glass Slipper.
Ooh, yeah.
So you can banish this item and exert one of your prince characters. Search your deck for a princess character card, reveal it to all players, put that card into your hand, and shuffle your deck. Okay. Spoilers, we have another card loaded up. I don't know if you want to show it now.
Yeah, we can just show it now and talk about them at the same time.
Yeah, because there's no way that these cards are not gonna go together.
Do you have the description, or I can read it for you?
Yep, I've got it. So Cinderella, 4 cost, inkable, 2/4, quest for 2. She is a princess, and I'm not sure what else because the rest wasn't in this translation. If the slipper fits, when you play this character, you may put an item card named the Glass Slipper from your discard pile on the bottom of your deck to gain 3 lore. So, like, one thing I feel like no one is pointing out is that you have to exert one of your prince characters.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, by design, this costs you 1 lore to activate.
Right.
Because you're exerted. I mean, unless you have a prince character that's reckless, yeah. You're exerting something with 1 lore. And then, in my opinion, that prince character is probably going to be banished on the opponent's turn.
Right.
So it feels like, for me, like this is super flashy, super exciting. Like, wow, gain 3 lore, stuff like that. For me, pairing this with Cinderella specifically, I'm not seeing it for like a tier 1 deck. I'm seeing this for movie night at Coliseum Comics for sure.
Right.
Like, I think this is great in like an underpowered format, but losing a lore in the form of whatever prince you had to exert. Plus, I believe the prince has to be in play at least a turn. I think I'm pretty confident the way Lorcana works versus like Magic is it has to be dry
Before
for you
you
to
can
exert it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think it's nice though that you could search for anything. Like you could search for Rapunzel. So like that alone, just like being able to draw 3 cards off Rapunzel might make the Glass Slipper really good. I think for Cinderella to be really good, you would need a way to like mill cards and like randomly hit the Glass Slipper, or you would want to play good cards that you can draw cards and discard cards from your hand, not necessarily using the slipper to search for Cinderella.
Yeah, so my initial like thought when I saw this, I guess, was like it is quite a lot of requirements, I guess you should say, because like you said, exerting the prince character. And then I was also thinking, oh, Glass Slipper, like before I really read it, I was like, oh well, this will probably find its home in like that weird, not weird in a bad way, just I don't know anything about it, that weird like Wreck-It Ralph princess deck, right? But I think the thing about, so like, and princess decks have like had some legs, obviously, like not necessarily meta play, but the meta's not the be all end all, right? There are a lot of locals where like you can play something like that and still win, like your store credit or what have you. So princess decks, I think, do have legs, but I think where like the issue is like I don't know, because I haven't built a princess deck myself, if now having that prince requirement kind of like makes the deck less consistent, which is where like that's the whole point of playing like those princess type decks, where like you were playing that Wreck-It Ralph to draw a princess because you knew that you were always going to have one, or like the Amber insert word that's on that card, where like if you have a princess character in play at the start of the turn, you gain lore. But again, like having something like having that extra condition of the prince, I think is just going to kind of take away from the consistency of those decks. So it's definitely an interesting mechanic, and I think some people who like really enjoy that kind of like rogue deck building will have a lot of fun with it. But But I don't know how strong I guess it's gonna be. Okay, so next up we're gonna talk about Snow White. So rounding out some of the princesses here. So Snow White is a 4-cost inkable. She's a 2/2 and she quests for 2, and she says this character can't be challenged. So I think we both said we had a similar experience with this card when we were like trying to think about what cards to include and what's interesting or not. And like one thing we both said was that we looked at this card for so long and just like couldn't really decide if it was like really good or really bad. And I think why, like, at least for me, like, because my initial thoughts, again, first card game, right? My initial thoughts were like, yeah, it's a 2/2. Like, it can be like removed by anything, right? Especially in steel. Like, anything can remove this. Like, fire the cannons, or you know, grab your swords, or twin, even like a twin fire. You know what I mean? Like, so many things can deal 2 damage. But then even in some of the other ink combinations, right? Like, we have brawl, you know? So it is easy to remove. But it's also like, if for example you just happen to, like, they just don't have it yet, sometimes that happens, you know, like they just don't see their, you know, their storm or their strength for a few turns, and they're like, what the heck? But I don't know that you can like rely on them just like not having it in order to like make a card more playable. So that's kind of where we go back and forth with this. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it also, so a couple of things. One is like against Emerald Amethyst, a lot of those decks now are playing like 60 characters. Like they have nothing that just banishes a character, and like they're not playing Bell like before chat gets in with 5-cost Bell.
Right.
Like a lot of those decks aren't playing it. Even like Blurple, they do play like 2 Bell and like 2 Hades. But I mean, are you gonna Hades this thing really? You know, the biggest problem is just like 4 costs, especially on the draw, is backbreaking. Like, it has to impact the board immediately, or just be like so good that it will win the game on its own. To be a 4 cost when at least half the games you're playing on the draw. You could even like turbo it out with like anything that says your characters cost 1 less, you know, and it's still just probably not as good on average as just playing like even a Rapunzel into nothing.
Right.
Like,
because that's way harder to remove in some ways. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think
it was interesting.
I think it is interesting, and like you said, right, like I think the problem with this card, and I do think, you know what, while we're talking about like what cards are interesting and like getting people, you know, to talk, I think a common theme that we see with the mindset of like this is broken or this will see no play is like people kind of do forget like play draw exists sometimes, like, which sounds silly, but it's true, right? So people will see something like this and they'll be like, well, this is ridiculous, what am I supposed to do? And it's like, okay, well, like you said, like half the time on the draw you only want to play this card if you're winning. So there's a lot of cards that can kind of like, and I think that's where we see some cards get kind of like almost quote unquote overhyped when we have card releases, is like you'll have a card that's only good when you're already ahead, or quote unquote only good when you're already ahead, and then people are like, well, this is just unfair. Well, yeah, if they're ahead and they like get to that point, sure, it's gonna close the game 100%, but you're forgetting all of the steps that it takes to like get to that position. So I think ultimately this card isn't gonna be great, but I do think something at least to mention, you know, if you're keeping this video in the back of your head later on once the meta develops, is maybe in response to certain metas like a Mufasa, you know, Amber Ruby is running rampant, or even an Emerald Amethyst, if those are like top dogs, you might be able to play this card and be fine, you know, because what are they gonna do? Especially because Amber Ruby doesn't even play Be Prepared. You know what I mean? Yeah,
they have the chair ladies and that's all.
So next up we have the Queen. She is a 4-cost inkable. So it says exert this character to put 3 cards from an opponent's discard pile to the bottom of their deck to gain 3 lore. If you choose a princess card, gain 4 lore. That's a really rough translation. As you can see, like for the people who are watching the video, you can see it doesn't literally say all of those words, but that's like what we're guessing it says, and it sounds right. And she's got she's a 4/3 stat line. She quests for 1. I just think this card is interesting because I think it's seen some mixed reactions. What do you think of this card?
My initial thought is I will never play with this card ever.
Okay.
But have seen a lot of people arguing, which, by the way, shout out to Ravensburger for making reveal season only 2 weeks because people are arguing way less.
Oh yeah,
and
I agree.
Our friendships have been saved. Okay. Let me get off that soapbox. But yeah, I mean, if you think about this, okay, she would normally, any 4 cost character that was a 4/3, let's say Goat,
Okay.
it would quest for 1 anyway, right? And Goat gained 1 when it came into play, and it gains when it leaves play. Okay, so this is just a Goat, but if they remove this before you get to quest with it, it was significantly worse than Goat.
Yeah.
So that's one way of looking at it. I don't know any other way of looking at it.
Well, yeah, and I think like, and this is something we talked about in our reveal video too, because we revealed an amethyst card that costs 4 with Treasure Guardian, and like I had mentioned in that video, the 4 cost slot in amethyst is competitive. It just is. You always have 4 goats and 4 rabbits. There were times people would cut down on goats or rabbits. They're just wrong, right? Like,
most of them.
No, but I mean, you know what I mean. So like, sure, quick lore, but like you said, it's not quick enough. And yes, with the 4 stat line, it does kind of pad it a little bit because you can't play something like a Medusa to get rid of it. But I don't know if that's enough to kind of like save or redeem this card. So will this have a home somewhere? Probably in rogue decks. Is Ruby Amethyst or Amethyst Steel picking this card up anytime soon? Probably not. So it is what it is. Okay. All right. So next up, we kind of have a 2-for-1 here because I have not played Magic the Gathering, but Mr. Burns here has. So we're talking about Donald Duck, Flustered Sorcerer, right? So this is a 7-cost uninkable, 5/6 stat line. Your opponent needs 25 lore to win the game. So just your opponent, not you. You could still win with 20. Your opponent can win at 25 now. Obviously, if he's banished, that ability goes away. Just clearing that up, right? So you linked me to, and I'm showing the card now, Platinum Angel. I don't know this, like what these words mean, but I'll read it. It's an artifact creature. Angel says flying. You can't lose the game, and your opponents can't win the game. Tell me about this comparison we're drawing here.
Okay, so let me pretend Platinum Angel is a Lorcana card. Okay, it's a 7-cost amethyst uninkable that quests for 4, and it has evasive. Okay, and then you can't lose the game. Your opponents can't win the game. So that is like the biggest thing to compare Donald Duck to from games that I have played.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any other games out there. And the problem with Platinum Angel, and the reason why it was never like a tier 1 like card, it would be like a one of in some things, especially decks that could constantly bring back Platinum Angel in case it were to be banished, which we don't have in Lorcana, was, well, if your opponent just mother knows best the Platinum Angel, you do lose.
You do in fact lose, yeah.
So like if your opponent is at 22 lore, mother knows best Donald Duck, you lose. I actually think Donald Duck is probably a better card than Platinum Angel was.
Oh.
Also, let me give you a funny story about Platinum Angel.
Okay.
So I'm playing in a Grand Prix trial. This is a competitive level event.
Okay.
This would be above set champs, but not as high as a DLC.
Okay.
So I play Platinum Angel on turn 3. Okay. I'm playing an Urzatron deck. I play Platinum Angel on turn 3. My opponent reads it, and he goes, well, okay, I concede. Scooped it up, okay? Oh, sounds good to me. Play the next game, mulligan for Platinum Angel. Play Platinum Angel. He just goes, gosh darn it, I lose. Okay, whatever. Good games. My opponent had about 30 cards in his main deck that could just kill Platinum Angel. He just never registered in his brain it was a character.
Oh.
Yeah. So he thought I basically just played a spell that says I can't lose and he can't win. Yeah. I also had an opponent try to deck me, and then he started picking up all his cards when I had no cards left in my deck, which I then had to tell him put all his cards back because I can't lose the game. So just some fun old gaming stuff.
Those that know get it.
Yeah. So what do you think of Donald? Do you think it's gonna see play?
Honestly, here's the thing, right? And I think like what you're talking about with Platinum Angel, where like once they removed it, you know, that's it. Like that like condition goes away, that ability goes away. I think similarly with Donald, I fail to see, at least personally, like I like its stats, I like the 5/6, I like the questing for 3, right? Hard to remove, but it is an uninkable card, right? And it does cost 7. So I think with this, yes, it's fun to see. Like I get why a lot of people are talking about it. Your opponent needs 25 lore to win the game. In my opinion, if you're ever playing this game, or excuse me, this card to stop your opponent from winning, I wonder how often it's actually gonna make the difference. Of course, sometimes it's gonna, right? Like let's say maybe, I guess, against like an aggro deck where you just need that one turn to where as long as they can't quest out to win, your board at this point is so big. You know what I mean? Like there's those games happen where like it will make the difference, but I do think on average, if you're playing this to win or like to at least stop yourself from losing, I fail to see where like you can actually wipe their board enough for it to matter. You know what I mean? Like this is something where you like play and hope you draw the be prepared off the top on your next draw, because otherwise they're winning anyways. Or think of like some decks that come to mind, or something like Emerald Steel, where like Emerald Steel traditionally can be really slow, or even something like Amber Emerald can be slower with the questing, but then they get to a point where you have no cards, right? They've ripped your whole hand apart, and now they've got a wide board where it took them a lot of turns to get there, but they have stabilized, and unless you like, again, top deck of be prepared, there's nothing you can do. So sure, you can slap this down, maybe buy yourself a turn, maybe buy yourself 2, but I feel like usually at that point they have so much lore, it's not going to matter. So I'd love to be proven wrong, just because I think the mechanic is really cool, and also I really like the card art. But I don't actually see this making too much of a difference. But that's just what I think. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I just played my ICL match against Frenty, and I was like no lore at all, banishing every character every single turn, and then all of a sudden it was just like quest for 8, quest for 9, quest for 10.
Right.
Yeah, like some decks, when they just take over to the point where they're questing for 10 plus every turn, and it might buy you a turn. I do think this is an interesting tech option.
Yeah.
And it being uninkable though means you have to be like so confident that you're gonna need this against certain decks, like at least half of your rounds, I would say. And then again, I would only think you could play this in like Blurple.
Right.
Like at least you can TPO it away, or you can just like turbo it out, play it on like turn 5 or 6, and just be like, you know what? It's just a 5/6 with no text that quest for 3. Deal with it. But like, if against like my old Amethyst Steel Dock deck, I wouldn't be able to remove this like at all.
Yep.
There would be nothing I could do.
Yeah.
I would just, but I mean, I could just get to 25 lore.
Right.
Like,
right.
Yeah, it's definitely not Platinum Angel.
No, and I think again, like at most, if we're talking about where this would see play, maybe, you know, the beginning of formats tend to be really sped up. I think aggro decks are like the quickest and easiest to make when you're experimenting with new cards. Like we saw that a lot with ARCHAZIA'S. The meta was super fast the first few weeks of the game. So maybe, you know, like you said, as a tech option, you're expecting to see a bunch of aggro for the first couple weeks until everybody has more cards. Maybe a 1 of or a 2 of, but like, yeah, it's kind of just like, at least for like something like Ruby Amethyst, I'd just rather see the be prepared, I think, you know, for this 7 cost uninkable.
Yeah.
No. All right. So that was Platinum Angel and Donald Duck. Next up, this one has been hotly debated. So we've got the return of Hercules. So this is a 5 cost inkable. It's an action, not a song. And it says each player may reveal a character card from their hand and play it for free. Okay. I did not play Magic. I saw a bunch of people talking about yada yada, show and tell. I've got that card here. This says show and tell, sorcery. Each player may choose an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land card in his or her hand and put that permanent into play. This means nothing to me. It means nothing to most of us who've never played Magic before. Tell me what's going on here.
For one, I was shocked to see people on Twitter that I know for a fact this is their first card game saying show and tell.
That's crazy.
That blew my mind. Yeah, like it was just they must have heard it in so many different chats and discords today that now it's just like in the lexicon of the game. Which, by the way, this card, Donald, and like the Hei Hei, the glass slipper, all of this stuff that I've been saying, props to R&D for like expanding so much outside of the realm of norm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So show and tell is a very popular deck in Magic, in Legacy, to the point where people will actually play a land that you can exert it to bounce a legendary character, because the opponent almost always puts a legendary character into play with show and tell.
Mm-hmm.
So they put their thing into play, you put your land into play, just put it right back in their hand. To the point where like people will play this land in off-color decks as just a nothing card because show and tell is so popular.
Wow.
Yeah, so in this game, I don't see this card being great. Like, what do you think?
I think like the problem with it is that it's so tempting, right? Like I think everybody's thoughts were like, oh, Maldragon, right? Like you said, a legendary, right? Like something that costs 9, and you're just like, oh my god, I get to play it for free. Like I get to play it so early. But I do think that is actually a trap, right? This is not singable. You can't sing this. And also, for what it's worth, this is an emerald, right? So like I think that was also for a reason. I'm not gonna say it's bad. I think a lot of people that I've seen have come to the consensus that like it's not good yet, but we need to be careful. Like look out for this card, because all it takes is one card being printed to make this just like, oh boy, this is the new show and tell. Everybody's got this in their deck. But I do think at least right now it's kind of got itself under control. It is inkable though, but like I said, it's an emerald, right? That does, I think, severely limit what you're gonna pair with this. But I do think emerald, ruby, evasives is gonna get really fun. I think you're gonna have a great time with that, you off meta players.
Here's the thing. So I see so many arguments that I feel are so flawed.
Okay.
Like, oh, I could just play a Diablo or an Ursula Deceiver the turn before this, see if the coast is clear. And then it's like, then I'll play this card. And it's like, well, if you got to look at their hand and there's nothing good in it, maybe you're just gonna win if you play a 5-cost character. and then it's like, oh, I'll just put Goofy in my deck.
Yeah.
Or I'll just put Maleficent in my deck, the dragon. It's like, okay, well now you're playing Emerald Ruby, which does not draw cards very well.
No.
You're kind of just like, oh, I drew my hand. This is what I'm playing with. And then it's like, when I don't draw this card, I have this 9-drop dragon that I'm never going to ink to 9.
Right.
Or I have this Goofy. What's plus 10?
Yeah.
What is Goofy? A 9/9?
It's a 10/10, but I think it costs 9. I'll double check.
Okay. Well, it's like, has anyone ever heard of Chernobog? Because that card is unplayable and it costs 0 sometimes. Like I feel like the best thing you can do with this card is like put a Mother Gothel into play, which only costs 6 and it's just for 4. Not to mention, like, your opponent could just have any of the cards you're also naming. Like, I just don't see how you're ever going to get such an advantage. And I think that's great in this game. Like, show and tell is busted in Magic. It is a game changer. Whereas, like, in this game, cards are just different, but people want to relate them to what they know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, that's why, like, people think a whole new world should be banned. And, like, it's not that prevalent. In some decks, when you draw a whole new world, you can't even play it
Right.
because your opponent gets such more of a benefit. Whereas like the whole new world equivalents in Magic are like all banned in like everything because they're way too good. So it's just a completely different mechanics.
Yeah, I think just because, like you said, we've seen this in another game, Lorcana is still its own card game, and it has its own unique, you know, mechanics, and part of that is, you know, the ink classifications, right? And so that is a restriction that's gonna change how this card is played. Also, something I wanted to mention, I forgot. Someone said in my Florida Discord that Return of Hercules is really just kind of like a worse Just in Time, and Just in Time doesn't see competitive play, you know. So again, have like rogue decks, more power to you. I think they're fun, you know. By the end of the set, I like to try them, but like at least in terms of like, are we going to see this at a DLC? No, because we're not seeing Just in Time at DLCs, you know what I mean? So like, yeah, I think that's kind of where this card lands. Has potential, but probably not.
Yeah, I mean, great for multiplayer, great for 2v2, which I think should be a full-blown format.
Yeah.
2-person teams. I would love 2-person teams. Because, like, all the cards say each opponent, or all the cards say all players.
Yeah.
So it'd be cool to build 2 decks that are geared towards stuff like this.
Yeah. All right. Next one we've got. Oh, we've got Tuk Tuk. So Tuk Tuk is a 2-cost uninkable 0/1, and it's got Bodyguard and Resist too. Quest for 1. So I actually like think this card is like cool. Like I think it's like really cool because it has that Bodyguard. Where like, yeah, is it gonna get removed right away? Yes. However, like think about it. Sometimes.
Well, maybe I would say maybe, not yet.
But like it's easy to like throw everything at it, you know, and banish it, right? Because, which again, the resist 2 does actually like matter, but like let's say, you know, like if yes, they're probably gonna remove it, and like it's not even gonna like be a good trade, right? Because it doesn't hit back for anything. But think about it in those situations where like they just need to wipe your board and they have just enough characters to do it, and you slam down a Tuk Tuk, and so now their character is exerted because they had to waste that character that was dry, you know, getting rid of a Tuk Tuk. I actually think it could be like situationally, I think I can see it, and I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes it's a better Simba, like 2-cost Simba. Sometimes it is significantly worse Simba.
Absolutely.
I wanted to put this on the list because it's just such an interesting thought. I think this could safely be inkable and still be just as good or bad as it is. But like, yeah, I mean, if you're playing against Amethyst, it's terrible, right? You can never do anything with it. They have foxes, they have crabs. They could crab a Diablo and get rid of this, and the Diablo lives. You know? So like, we're not saying this is like changing the whole meta, but
no.
Like, I would say there are times where like your opponent, like even against like Amber Steel, they're gonna have to like strength it.
Yeah.
Or use me. Like, everything else only deals 1 or 2, and their songs deal 1 or 2, or they're gonna have to like Zeus this thing if they want to get through to your characters, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah.
It survives Tinkerbell. It survives Tinkerbell challenging another bodyguard and trying to shoot this thing. It survives Grab Your Swords.
It survives Tinkerbell sing Grab Your Swords on the same turn.
It's just such an interesting card where like, and again, like just having a random 2-cost bodyguard might just be insanely good. Not only that, like, I know this is more on inkables. Like if you play cards like Calhoun, you want your opponents to exert their characters. Like you're going as far as playing like 5-cost Elsa to exert their characters so you can use Calhoun. Also, there are ways to give your characters resist. Like there is a song that says your character gains resist +2. Draw a card.
Yep.
Your opponent would need a Maui or something like that to clear this at that point. Like if you could really wall this thing up, it's just that bad of a character, and I haven't heard anyone talking about it whatsoever.
No, I agree. And also like something that we saw pop up recently, kiwi birds, right? That
Yeah,
sapphire steel like aggro list. Like you know, you put a Cogsworth into play, now it's got resist 3, and you've
yeah.
got like character, and then you can ward this thing. You know what I
I
mean?
was
Like
gonna
with
say you can give it
Alice.
ward. Yeah,
Like, and so like yes, of course it's uninkable, and like yeah, it's not gonna trade up to anything, but like I think when you're wanting to play this isn't on curve, right? Like you don't want to play
right.
this on curve. You want, this is like one of the rare times you kind of want to top deck into this in certain cases, so that way you can put it down and it puts in work. Like I said, if they only have, you know, 3 characters out, and it's because they were planning to, you know, banish your 3 characters on the other side, and then you throw down a bodyguard, like it's, they're not gonna have enough to deal with it. You know what I mean? So I think it's fun. Yeah, I think it's like maybe we're way off and this is gonna be terrible, but I like it. I think it's
Yeah,
cool
that's
that it's
fine.
in the game, you know. So hopefully this can make something happen, because I do think this can inspire a lot of creativity. I just think it'd be hilarious to see them Zeus a 0-1.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're not trying to sell you a guide saying that this is, you know, S tier deck.
Cool. All right, so that's Tuk Tuk. Almost done here. Okay, Tamatoa, not much to say about it, but we got to include it because everybody's talking about it, right? So we've all seen it. 6 cost inkable, 4/5 stat line. When you play this character, return up to 2 item cards from your discard to your hand. Whenever this character quests, you may play an item for free, and it quests for 2. Anything you want to say?
I mean, you asked some people like, "Hey, are there any cards we should talk about?" And I was shocked someone included this because, like, what is there to talk about? This card is so good. I don't know what else you could possibly say. The only thing that could make it better is if it had shift. Like, this
Yep.
card is just nuts. Like, it's just
Yeah.
a solid Lorcana card.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing is some people are saying this is going to make, you know, the 8 cost Tamatoa a 2/2 split. Is that something you think that, you know, this is going to make the other Tamatoa go away entirely, or you think it'll still be around?
I've been fine not playing that 8 cost Tamatoa for multiple sets now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So it's gone.
especially now with Shark being printed,
That's true.
yeah, like this card is just a menace.
Yep. So there you have it. Great card. Happy to see it. Cool art too. So awesome. Okay. And then almost done here. Second to last card, we've got Ink Geyser. So this is a 3 cost uninkable. It is a emerald and sapphire action. So each player exerts all the cards in their inkwell. Then each player with more than 3 cards in their inkwell returns cards at random from their inkwell to their hand until they have 3 cards in their inkwell. Okay, a lot of text, a lot to do with the inkwell. Basically, you're picking your ink back up, right? And you're going back down to 3 ink. What do you think of this card?
Oh my god, I'm so stupid. I should have sent you 2 magic cards.
Oh, really?
So there's a magic card. It costs 6. It's called Upheaval,
Okay.
and it just returns everything back to everyone's hand.
Oh, wow.
It's banned in multiplayer because it just resets the game.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not fun at all.
Yeah.
And then there's a few enchantments, which are like items, that there's one called Rising Waters, one called Stasis, where basically you can't ready most of your ink each turn. So you're basically playing with like 2 or 3 ink every
Okay.
turn. So this is a lot like that. Those cards are also blue, whereas this is sapphire.
Yeah.
So like you can make a lot of comparisons there. So I think this card is so good for the game.
Nice. Okay, let's hear why.
And so many people disagree with me.
I saw
I am
people
going.
retire Lorcana over this card. So some
Oh
people
yeah,
definitely
quit.
disagree
Most
with
of
you.
Yeah, so here's the thing is like I like winning, right?
Yep.
I like actually closing out the games, and I play cards that quest, right?
Yep.
So like I'm not really too worried about this card. And I think the fact that if this is like a large share of the meta, like if this is a huge part of the meta, can you even bring Ruby Amethyst? Are you ever going to get to 7 to be prepared?
No.
yeah,
Ever.
reasonably. It's just like, why would I ever play uninkable Lady Tremaine,
Yeah.
uninkable Madame Medusa, uninkable Be Prepared if like my opponent is gonna keep resetting me to 3 ink?
Right.
You know, like this doesn't help the fact that like Ruby Sapphire has no problem with this. Like they can just go back to playing like fishbone quills and stuff like that. I also think that this like isn't very good against aggro decks.
No,
They
it's
can
not.
just like ink their goats early, ink their whatever, their Jafar illusions and all that stuff early, because oh whatever, my opponent's gonna give me a random shot at getting them back later anyway.
Yeah.
I'll just play on curve and smash their face in while they're busy. Like this card is going to go into either like Oswald item decks where they try to gain ink in other ways, or it's going to go into like blue-green under the sea ramp decks.
Mm-hmm.
And if one of those decks are popular, they're very easy to counter.
Yeah.
While keeping down these big, expensive, scary, like blue steel, ruby amethyst, stuff like that. So I think it's good for the game.
So the only other thing that I think was interesting about this card that I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on, just as a more experienced player. So again, going back to this being dual ink, they specifically put this card in the ramp color, right? So they put it into Sapphire. Why do you like? What do you think about something like Ink Geyser being in a like color combination where you ramp a lot?
Well, I do think, luckily, I don't think, I know. It's one of the worst ramp colors. Right?
Okay.
Which I love that about dual ink cards, is like they can take archetypes that are terrible. Like when I say archetypes, I mean color combinations that are terrible, and they could elevate them. Like I think that is a fantastic use of the deck building restriction of dual inks.
Yeah.
I think if this was any other Sapphire plus whatever, it would be way too good. I think this was like the perfect one, because like Amber has items that say your characters cost 1 less, or Heart of Atlantis, your character costs 2 less, so you can still just keep rolling. Whereas this one, you have like your items cost less, but items are a tempo loss. They take turns off of playing characters to the board. So I think that this is gonna have to go into like a blue-green aggro deck, or like I was saying earlier with the like the Oswald and stuff like that. So I think this was like the perfect color combination to put this into.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, well then we're moving on to our last card, and before we talk about Sapphire Coil, I actually want to quickly say, based on what we've said throughout, you know, a couple different cards like Ink Geyser, and there's been a couple other cards we talked about, really just like props to Ravensburger, because they're continuing to make awesome cards. And this isn't us just like saying that to look good, you know what I mean? No one from Ravensburger's watching our videos, but it's like, as fans of the game, it's like exciting to see like where we have cards like this where we can see Ink Geyser. And yes, again, some people are like, oh my god, I'm quitting the game, but you know, like realistically, like there is reasons for cards like this to exist, and they can be healthy. So I do think, before we talk about Sapphire Coil, which might have been, some might say, a misstep in the design of Lorcana, we have had some big wins, right? And so it's exciting to see, and actually I do genuinely mean that. Like I do think like it just, Lorcana keeps getting more and more exciting every single set, and so I'm happy to see that. That being said, Sapphire Coil, let's talk about it. 2-cost inkable. It is an item with brilliant shine. During your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, you may give chosen character -2 attack this turn. What do you want to say about this?
You know, something I was taught by an old coworker was, when someone calls for a recommendation and you want to tell the people, no, don't hire this person, this is terrible, like they suck at their job, you say, you know what, can't say enough nice things about it. And that's all I can say about this. I just can't say enough nice things about Sapphire Coil. because I have nothing nice to say about Sapphire Coil. As far as to say, I think the people who think this card's unplayable don't understand the game of Lorcana.
Okay. That's a
That's
big statement.
Yeah, I mean, you can say something like it's not broken. You could say something like maybe I'll pick between this and another card with the same effect. But like when I see people saying this card is unplayable, I'm just like, where have you been? Like, did you watch DLC Australia? Like,
Yeah.
do you not understand? Like, not even having to like have an uninkable item in your deck. Like, remember when we used to play one jump ahead, but now we have like inkable ramp?
Right.
Okay, well, like we used to play ice block, now we have inkable ice block. It's just
Right.
like, I don't know. And like, yeah, you get to a time in the game where you're no longer inking. That time is when you're winning.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And I think if this was a 3-cost uninkable, just like a bunch of the other ones, it would still probably see some amount of play, but it would not be as ridiculous. The fact that it curves perfectly into a 3-drop human Sisu, and I think there's only like 2 cards in the game that the Sisu does not banish. So you get to just like play a character onto the board that is evasive, that has an amazing shift target.
Yep.
And now has like no downside whatsoever, is crazy. I don't understand.
and not to mention, so it makes that small Sisu better, but also the shift line in and of itself was already good, right? And then this just makes that shift line even better, and it was already good. Yeah. It was already
like
great.
Now you like, people were cutting Fishbone Quills because it's like so hard to take a turn off for Fishbone Quill, and then you only had like 1 ice block plus Sisu. Now you could take a turn off to play the Fishbone Quill. The next turn, ink for turn, use Fishbone Quill, reduce 2 different things. Sisu, that's probably their whole board.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, fun dick is over right now. This is angry dick. Can you tell?
Well, it's actually angry Tweedledee, but yes.
Also, since I'm already like crapping on people,
yeah,
what is the deal with people every set release, it's especially happening with multicolor cards now, saying like when they post a card that's just obvious like chaff, they're just like, oh my god, this card's unplayable. Why are they printing these unplayable cards? There's 204 new cards. Do you think every card is going in a deck? Like,
no more Mr. Nice Guy. He's saying it all.
We're 7 sets in. Did you play every single card that's ever been printed? I don't understand. Like, you can make fun of like Ravensburger or whatever, sometimes unjustly, sometimes justly, but like this is just stupid. This like, oh my god, this random common is just not good. Yeah. That's card games. Like, it's not like a From the Vault with Magic where they selected 15 of the most powerful cards in the game and put them in a set. Like, do people realize if every card was good, no cards would be good?
Yeah.
That's just how things work. All right, I'll get off my soapbox now.
All right. So Sapphire Coil is going to be a problem. I agree. I think people who are saying like this is overhyped, this isn't going to see any play, I think respectfully are just wrong, right? Because we've seen how powerful Sapphire Ruby is and clearly is going to continue to be. And so we're going to see it. And we better start planning around it now. That's what I would say.
And have you seen Under the Sea? There's so many cards that it works with. It's insane. Like, by the way, what do you do when it's not good? You just ink it. Yep. Like, it's inkable.
Yep.
So like, oh, I'm not gonna put this in my deck because sometimes it's bad. Okay, that's 75% of cards in the game. Like, oh god. I just have so many other good cards to play. I guess I'll ink this one. Yeah.
It's also worth noting, right? Like they very specifically did not make this a once per turn ability.
I know. Also, like, I don't have the image up right now. Is this one say only on your turn?
During your turn, yes.
Yeah, I was making fun of this so much on the TFM podcast.
Yeah.
Like, why? Why? Like, why is that the line? Only on your turn. Yeah, I was. If someone lets it go, my character, why can't I reduce something? Like, why is it got to be only on your turn? You know, like, what does that even matter?
No, it matters because then order matters, right? And so then if they can't like challenge something because they did it out of order,
If they were dumb enough to Hades your character before challenging something, when you have the Sapphire coil in play, you should they deserve it. They don't deserve to banish your character.
we've lost it, folks. We've lost him. He's going off the deep end.
You can take the last 10 minutes of this and make it its own video, and you'll get 10,000 views.
We've lost him. He's angry. Okay, so that is all the cards that we wanted to talk about. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is so funny. Okay, no, but seriously, so those are the cards that we wanted to talk about. These were our honest opinions. These were our, first impressions. I don't think everything's been revealed yet. We're only about halfway through, so who knows what kind of updates are going to come. But these are our initial impressions, our first thoughts on things that we actually thought were worth talking about. If you guys enjoyed, leave us a like, leave us a comment if you want to see more angry Tweedledee. I liked seeing you fired up. And anything else you want to say before we go?
No.
There we go. All right. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Peace.